Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. I hope everybody had a great week. It's July. I can't believe it. It's a long weekend. I suppose all of you who have regular jobs, you really enjoy having a 4th of July that falls on a Monday or a Friday. I guess it kind of stinks if it falls on maybe a Wednesday, then you have to go to work for 2 days, and you get a day off, and then you have to work 2 days, and then there may be many of you who don't get off work at all. But we just had a 3-day weekend for Memorial Day, and now it's another 3-day weekend for a lot of people for the 4th of July weekend. You want to add some excitement to your weekend, and by the time you're listening to this on Red State Talk Radio, the drawing will already have been done, but Mega Millions is up to $413 million. If it did not hit tonight, then you can wait till Tuesday, where by that time it'll probably be up to 445 million, something like that, but maybe somebody will hit it tonight. I will, you can just take for granted that I bought a ticket. Maybe I'll get lucky. And you know what? If I hit, I would keep doing this show. I would keep doing my other show, the America's Missing podcast as well. I don't know how much any of my behavior would change, but my living conditions, my vehicle would change, some other things. But I keep doing everything that I'm doing, probably because I'm not in a situation where I have a job that torments me from day to day. I'm just a struggling artist, which is a little bit of a different situation. So there's that. And Powerball, I don't even know what Powerball is. Neither one of them, I don't take them seriously until they get up into the $200 to $300 million range. Anything below that, of course, any of that money would be nice winning, but it has to get up to that range before I start buying a ticket. And you'll remember Powerball at the beginning of this year got up to over $1 billion. So we'll see if it ever reaches that again. But it's nice to dream. You think about winning that. Of course, there's the downside of all the people that are going to come to you for money, all these charities, and I'm sure it's hard to say no for a lot of these people, and it's probably why a lot of them win and try to remain anonymous. I think in some states you can legally remain anonymous. And then there are other states where if you win it, it actually becomes public record. And I'm not sure how that all breaks down. But I know a lot of these people choose to remain anonymous for very good reasons. So let's get to the show. I did not have the chance to talk about, whenever it came out a couple days ago, this Rasmussen poll that came out saying that Donald Trump had a lead nationally. And it was something like 44 to 39%, something like that. And I remember, looking back at my notes, like I said, I didn't have a chance to get to it. And I want to make sure that I am unbiased in this. I'm not going to just talk to you about the polls that show Trump behind, and so I can say that I told you so. If there are any polls out there that I think are worthy of mentioning that show him ahead, I'll talk about those too and offer an opinion to them. The truth is, 95% of the polls that have been done in a contest between Hillary and Donald in the last couple months have shown her ahead. It's been pretty consistent. So this Rasmussen poll is an outlier. And you look at the numbers, like I said, it was something like 44 to 39%. That's only 83%. So that means like there's 17% of people who are either going to go third party or undecided, or they're still hanging on to Bernie Sanders. That's, I think, going to continue to happen on both sides. I think that the truest numbers we're going to get is after the conventions are over. I'm going to continue to be a never Trump person, a never Hillary person as well, and a never Bernie person, and probably a never Gary Johnson person too. But I realize, and I stated this from the beginning, I know a lot of people who are never Trump right now will end up voting for Donald Trump. I realize that. I don't like it. I wish more people weren't going to vote for him or Hillary or any of these idiots. But that's the way it's going to go. And I try not to think about it too much. And that's why I say that once the conventions are over, we'll get a better idea of this. If there's still, let's put it this way, at the end of August or beginning of September, if there are still polls in which the numbers are still 18%, 17%, 16% undecided, that's going to be interesting. I'm going to have to do a little bit of reading about that, but I think that there is still a lot of hope out there, especially on the Democrat side, that something will change. And there's less hope on the Republican side. You start reading about the delegates and the Rules Committee, and I'm not saying the fix is in. I think they're just going by the rules. I don't think that Donald Trump is trying to manipulate anything, no matter what he may say about it. He doesn't want people who are supporting him to be there, and people who don't support him shouldn't be able to run for office again, and all of that crazy stuff. But we knew it was a long shot anyway. As soon as Indiana, the state of Indiana, voted for Donald Trump, you knew that it automatically went to a long shot, and with Ted Cruz bowing out, maybe something will happen. You just cross your fingers. So the Rasmussen poll showed Donald Trump ahead. And it's contradictory to a lot of these other polls that are out there. But then I want to combine this with a Fox News poll that happened yesterday, showing that Hillary Clinton, now we know that Fox News has been pro-Trump for a long time now. A majority of their hosts have been very kind to him. Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity, Greta Van Susteren. Whereas some people on the five, what is that? Greg Gutfeld and some of the other ones. As you know, I don't watch TV. I just read about what goes on. I know a few of them have not been very kind to him. But overall, Trump continues to get very favorable coverage on Fox News. So they do this poll, and Hillary Clinton wins it, 44-38. In fact, it's almost the exact opposite of the Rasmussen poll. The numbers are flipped. In addition, there's a huge amount of people who are still undecided. And once you go into the numbers, you can see why these people are undecided. There's nobody who's absolutely thrilled. In fact, even in this Fox News poll, as much as Trump people say how much he won and rub it in, according to the Fox News poll, 51% of Republicans at this point wish Donald Trump was not going to be the nominee. And in most demographics, he is trailing behind Mitt Romney from 2012. Now, the good news is that Hillary Clinton is also trailing behind in demographics, according to what Barack Obama did in 2012. But I've told you, I'm under no delusions, what would be the right word? Under no delusion that Hillary Clinton is going to get as much of the popular vote as Barack Obama did in 2012. He got about 65 million, somewhere around there, popular vote. She's not going to get that many. She's just not. I think that she gets to 60 million of the popular vote, but I don't think that she's going to get to 65 million simply because of what you see in poll after poll after poll, but I think it's going to be enough to win. And that's why I told you that Donald Trump, to win, he's going to have to get as much of the popular vote as George W. Bush did in 2004. And in 2004, that was about as an efficient political machine as the Republican Party has ever seen, even in the Ronald Reagan years. They needed to turn out everybody in 2004 to beat John Kerry, and that's exactly what happened. So what you have to believe, now granted it's 12 years later, there are more people in the United States. There are, I guess, a few more Republicans. More adults than there were in 2004. The country has more people than it did in 2004. But still, it's going to be quite a task if you're going to tell me that Hillary Clinton is going to get at least 60 million of the popular vote. That means that Donald Trump has to get 61 million or 62 million, around that number that George W. Bush did in 2004. And I just don't see it happening, simply because Donald Trump does not have a political machine. His political, what we generally understand that, his political machine is just a force of personality. It's a cult of personality. It show up because I'm me. There's not a lot of phone calls being done, not a lot of emails, not a lot of reaching out to maybe people who haven't voted in a while. You can read story after story. I'm going to just take for granted it's true. I'm not there. I'm not in any of these offices trying to decipher all this. I'm just reading what you're reading, and that's what I see. I would also add that even if we heard that he had a decent get out the vote campaign, that we heard that Mitt Romney had a great get out the vote campaign in 2012 as well, and we know what happened there. It wasn't as organized as everybody thought. So now we're hearing that Donald Trump doesn't have much of anything, which probably means he has nothing. And he's going to get as many votes as George W. Bush did in 2004. And I remind you, George W. Bush was much more popular than Donald Trump is now. This is, I don't know if this is something that, I think what's going on in when Trump supporters see these polls is they choose not to believe him, and that's fine. I'm not saying these polls are exactly right, and I certainly don't believe that come November that the breakdown, even if Hillary won, it's going to be 44 to 38 or 44 to 39. I think the numbers are going to add up a little closer to 50% than that. Okay, so I realize that the numbers are off, and I think that that's enough to keep the Trump people thinking, well, she's a known entity, and the most she can get for 40 is 44%, which means all we have to do is get 46, 47%, and then we're going to win this thing. I don't think that's believable. I just don't. But I think when you start framing the election, instead of thinking about electoral votes, which are, I know there's a couple different websites you can mess around, it's like a calculator. Well, if Hillary does this in this state, then Trump will do this in that state, and back and forth, and figure out how each of them can get to 270. I think it's much easier to once again think about the popular vote, which, except for the year 2000, has been a pretty good indicator whether a person is going to become president or not. There are quirks in our system, no doubt about it. And it happened in 2000. And before that, it had been a long time since something weird like that happened. So you have to think of it. I think it's easier to think about it just to look at prior elections, recent elections, and look at how many people you think are going to show up. And even in the Republican primaries, Donald Trump didn't get a majority of the votes. And even now here into July 1st, a majority of Republicans, even in a Fox News poll, don't like him. Now you tell me, under those conditions, if that is to continue, how he's going to get over 60 million of the popular vote. In fact, it feels more like, to me, what John McCain got in 2008. I think that turnout's going to be down this year, first of all. So somebody's going to be able to win with less of the popular vote anyway. So once again, in a year where, in 2004, that is the most people that had ever shown up for an American election in history. that number on the Republican side is going to be reached again in a year where turnout is most likely going to be down, given what the average American voter think about the choices. And you start throwing that all around in your head. You don't have to be a political scientist. You don't have to check a map. All you have to do is go into Wikipedia and look at the last few elections about what the popular vote was, and then you start understanding why it's going to be difficult for Donald Trump to win. And so these things about crushing Hillary Clinton, I think also what's going on is on the Trump supporter side is that secretly, I mean, they're hoping for it publicly, don't get me wrong. But behind the scenes, when they start talking about we're going to crush Hillary Clinton because she's so hated and she's so dishonest and everything, what they're really thinking is saying is that they're hoping that all this email and Benghazi controversy and the Clinton Foundation creeps up on her from behind and pulls her down. I really believe if Trump's people, if you could get them with some truth serum, what they're thinking is if those things don't matter, then we have no chance. People are going to have to factor that in when they go into the ballot box for Donald Trump to win, because he can't beat her just one-on-one without that stuff being involved. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to tell all of them that all of that stuff I think is already factored in. People know about Benghazi. They've either accepted or they dismiss it. And I'm going to get into a story about that here in a little bit, just on its own. People know about the email controversy. I think it's already factored into her honesty, dishonesty numbers. The Clinton Foundation and all that, it's already factored in. You have to remember something. If those things never happened, if she was a perfect Secretary of State, if she managed her email the right way, if she wasn't quite as corrupt as it seems going back to the 90s when she wasn't even president, if all those things were different, she'd be up at 60% in these polls. So the only reason she's getting those numbers in the 40s is because of those things. Even though I don't know how, I can't put a number on it. I don't know if it's costing her 5% or 8%. I'm not sure. I just know that they're already factored in. People know. They just don't care. As you can see in this Fox News poll, there are 44% of people out there who don't give a dang. However, I think what the Trump people are thinking is, well, those numbers are still going to go down because of those issues. They're not. And in fact, as I continue to believe, even despite Bill Clinton getting together with Loretta Lynch and talking to her, and now Loretta Lynch coming out today saying that was bad optics what I did there, I shouldn't have done that. She's going to say she's just going to let the FBI do whatever it wants. I've told you what's going to happen with the FBI. They're going to figure out, did anybody die because of what Hillary Clinton did? They're going to, regarding her email. They're going to say, did anybody get compromised because of her email? Did anybody get outed? Did anybody get blackmailed? Did anything like that happen? Now, if the answer is no, nothing is going to happen to her. Now, if any of those questions are a yes, then the FBI is going to look into the circumstances, and then they're going to continue to investigate, and that's going to take well past the election. And as I've told you, the FBI is going to be hesitant to get involved in a presidential election where bringing an indictment against a nominee of one of the parties can be seen as giving the election to the other party. The FBI is going to say, you know what the FBI is going to say? They're going to say what I'm saying. That, you know what, a bunch of Democrats already know this about Hillary Clinton. They wanted to be president. What are we supposed to do about it? In fact, running for president, given the situation that Hillary Clinton is in with the emails and Benghazi and everything else, is the best thing she could do to protect herself from getting any charges brought against her. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what's going on the Hillary side. It's already factored in. And on the Republican side, on the Trump side, they continue to think that these polls are crazy. Maybe they are. But I also think that they believe that Hillary's dishonesty numbers and everything are going to get caught, she's going to get caught up in all of that, whereas I say that stuff has already been factored in. And should also note that a lot of that 18% in both of these polls, Rasmussen and Fox News, with all these undecided, I'm going to say it again, a lot of Bernie voters in there. There's a lot of Never Trump people in that as well, but I actually think there are more Bernie Sanders supporters holding out than Never Trump people holding out in these polls. And you should also be noted in the Fox News poll, contrasting this recent poll with the poll they did last time. On the Republican side, the view of Donald Trump, their opinion of him has gone down in the last month, not up. And I think, once again, I think this is something that Ted Cruz knew back when he decided to quit after Indiana. That he simply said, you know what, Republicans, all you people who vote him, you want him, you can have him. You could see what he's like. Instead, I'll take myself out of the equation where he has to just go out there and see how he attacks Hillary Clinton, and he has to talk about these topics on his own, and I take myself out, and he doesn't have to talk about the assassination of JFK. We'll see what kind of candidate we get. And as more and more Donald Trump is seeing as being on his own, his numbers go down. Even in a Fox News poll. A lot of things can happen, and I haven't been the best at predicting elections anyway. I even got the Brexit thing wrong. I don't feel too bad about that because a lot of people got that wrong, and plus it's another country, so what the heck do I know? But I've gotten the last couple presidential elections wrong, simply thinking with my heart instead of my head, which is not very common for me. But my head tells me right now that Donald Trump has no shot. But still, it's a long way off. I'm not going to be voting for any of these people either way. Now, I do want to talk about Benghazi for a second from a different point of view. One of the wives of one of the men, the wife of one of the men who was killed in the Benghazi attack back in September of 2012, she did an interview. I forget where it was. And she was talking, of course, in negative terms about Hillary Clinton. And was bringing up what Hillary Clinton said in one of her first meetings in front of Congress regarding the whole thing. What does it matter now? Can't we move on? And this wife, her name is she's a doctor, Dorothy Woods. I don't know what kind of doctor she is. Her husband's name was Tyrone. I believe he was one of the 2 military members who went to defend the consulate there and got killed. They were waiting for reinforcements to show up, and they never did. She was really criticizing Hillary Clinton for acting the way that she has. And she's right. But I think that if you're going to be in a position like that, and your husband is dead, and you're, of course, very sad about what happened, and very angry about what happened, I think you have to also talk about the people in the United States who have let her slide, as have these last couple polls. At least 40% of the people in the United States are energetic supporters of Hillary Clinton, and guess what? They don't give a dang about your husband. When I hear a family member get on, I just wonder, first of all, I'd like to know what political party this woman is a part of in the first place. Mm-hmm. That would be interesting to me. Maybe she's a Republican, maybe she's a Democrat. I don't know. But you'd like to hear a family member call out that 40-some% of the American people who want Hillary Clinton to be the next president of the United States. Now, see, for you Trump people, that might help you. I'm not a supporter of yours, as you know. But I'm guessing that this woman, this Dr. Dorothy Woods, doesn't want Hillary Clinton to be president simply because of what happened in Benghazi. But the issue is truly the American people regarding all of this. And that's just not, maybe that's just not fashionable to talk about. Maybe she doesn't want to do that. Maybe she figures that she starts doing that, she's going to get all sorts of rude emails from, the average person, the average American doesn't like to be attacked. We've deified the average American so much in this country that they surely can't be wrong. Well, there are a lot of average Americans who are Democrats that don't give a dang about this woman's husband who died back in September 2012 in Benghazi. That would go much further, I think, than just criticizing Hillary Clinton. The truth is that just calling out Hillary Clinton alone is a little too easy. If it were me, and I was the Republican, and I'm not a part of the Republican Party anymore, and I was running against her, and of course I wouldn't be like Donald Trump, I know what I would be saying in speeches. I would be, of course, hammering her on Benghazi, but I'd also be saying, I see these polls. I'm winning some, I'm losing some. It's July 1st, 2016. Winning some, losing some. Do you, 40-some% of you Democrat, you people who are voting for Hillary Clinton, do you have no shame? Is that what it is? I would just like to know. Because there is every indicator that Hillary Clinton was at least partially responsible for what happened in Benghazi, and all she wants to do is talk about moving on and pushing it under the rug. Are you, all of you, that shameful that you so badly want your person to win that this person can get away with something in which 4 people got killed? I just want to know. I just want you to answer that for me. I just want to put all of you, 40, whatever it is, 44%, how many people answered the poll? If it's 1,000 people polled, I guess that would be 440 of you. I just want you 440 people to sign something saying, I don't care about Benghazi. I want you to go on the record because of that. I don't care that Dr. Dorothy Woods' husband died. I don't care that the administration and Hillary Clinton set up some film on YouTube as being the reason for it. I just want to get you all on the record. You aren't going to go to jail. There will be no charges, no fines, no probation. I just want to have it on the record that you don't give a dang. Because there are no murdered people in my past. And Lord knows, being a Republican, I would surely get covered in much harsher terms than Hillary Clinton has been covered regarding all of this. But there aren't any widows out there saying that I told her and everybody else to move on with a mistake that I made. Right? But somehow I'm worse than Hillary Clinton. Now, I'd love for Donald Trump to do that, even though I'm not a supporter of his. But you know why he can't do it? You know why Trump supporters, why he doesn't give that speech as much as awesome as it is, as awesome as that would be? Because he was a supporter of Hillary Clinton's in 2012. That's why. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue that discussion for just a couple more minutes. I was talking about Dr. Dorothy Woods and her criticism of Hillary Clinton and how I believe she should be criticizing those Americans who will be voting for Hillary Clinton in November. Might as well pick a lot more targets than just Hillary Clinton herself. And then I pointed out that you'd love to hear Donald Trump say something like what I said before the break, but he can't do it. Because probably remember, he was no fan of Mitt Romney. He made fun of Mitt Romney. He continues to make fun of Mitt Romney, and I'm not here to defend Mitt Romney, but that's what's going on. Donald Trump was a huge Barack Obama fan. A huge, for years and years and years, Hillary Clinton fan. And I'm not saying that Donald Trump was happy Benghazi happened, but I'm sure that there's a part of him around September 2012 and into 2013 and 2014 probably sympathized long and hard with Hillary Clinton. So that's why you're not going to get a speech out of Donald Trump where he calls out those people who continue to support her all these years later. Why? Because he was one of them at one time. And that's why I pointed out much earlier this week that the perfect defense for Hillary Clinton once these debates happened is, you know, Donald, I know you hate me now, but look at all this money. I have receipts. I had my accountant get all the receipts for all the money you gave me over the years. And you know what? I'm still a lot the same person that I was when you were supporting me. So are you telling the truth now or are you telling the truth then? In fact, you've given more money to me over the years, me and my husband, for either our campaigns, our foundations, our nonprofits, than you've given to the Republican Party. And you're its nominee. Oh, if I was in Hillary Clinton's shoes, I'd love that argument. And once again, I hate that I have to talk about it in these terms. But this is what happens when you get flawed people running for office. You have to point out the flaws of all of them. Because I have to be honest with you. So this is what we're stuck with. We're stuck with Donald Trump, a guy who has trouble getting into the 40% in any of these polls, loses most of them, is not conservative, who knows what it'd be as president. And we have a woman who is just about the same way. You know, in some alternate universe, it would make more sense that Hillary Clinton was running for office and Donald Trump was her vice presidential pick, or the opposite. That would make more sense than what's going on now in real life. Let me move on to something else. Did you see this rant? See, this is one of those other points that I've made at least a few months ago regarding Donald Trump and all these conservatives getting wrapped up in him. Did you hear this rant or see this rant? I guess I would hear it. This rant that Mike Lee went on regarding Donald Trump. He was on a show with, let me see if I wrote it down, a guy from Newsmax, Steve Malzberg, who I will be honest, I've never heard of. Of course, I know what Newsmax is. Steve Malzberg, I guess, has a podcast or a radio show. News to me. I've never even heard of him. But Steve Malzberg, who sounds to me is a Trump hunk, they started talking about Donald Trump, and it sounds to me like Mike Lee really, really didn't want to have to do this. But he did it, and he ended up going on this rant about Donald Trump, talking about JFK, and Mike Lee calls Ted Cruz one of his best friends. And it's a pretty good bang-up job. It's probably even the most heated anti-Trump rant that we've had from a politician yet, and this probably passes anything Ben Sass does. I think Ben Sass has been number one to this point, but mild-mannered Mike Lee from Utah, and he even got into talking about religious freedom and how the governor of Missouri wanted to kill all the Mormons back in 1838. He even touched upon that in that rant, which was really special. So here's a guy, and I wrote this down just to remind all of you. Mike Lee is the only senator in Congress, only senator in the Senate, with a perfect 100% conservative rating from conservativereview.com. Ted Cruz gets 97%. So he is, by all standards, a perfect conservative, as perfect as you're going to get who's a politician. But I'm sure, since he went on this rant, was it yesterday or the day before that happened, that since then, I'm sure a lot of people who call themselves conservatives have come out and blasted him, Mike Lee, for saying what he said, simply because they're Donald Trump supporters. And see, this is how fractures start. When you find yourself criticizing a person that you agree with just because you have loyalty to somebody else who doesn't have a lot of the same ideals that you do. And this is going to continue from now until November. And if Donald Trump wins, it's going to continue past that. In fact, it'll continue for the next 4 years if Donald Trump can even get through 4 years without getting impeached. So now we have Mike Lee, who I'm sure that Laura Ingraham and Ann Coulter and all the rest of them have loved for years, said nice things about him, all the great work that he's done in the Senate. And they come out and, at night, maybe do I think too much of these people? Do I think too much about the consciences? Man, that's a hard word to say. Consciences of these people? Do they really go to bed at night and not think once about how hypocritical they've become? Do not even for a second do they lie at bed at night staring at the ceiling and saying, how the heck did I end up on the wrong side of Mike Lee? Do they never even ask that? Whereas I think that it's much easier for me to explain how I've ended up on the wrong side, for example, of a guy who I've respected for a lot of years, Newt Gingrich. It's very easy for me to explain why that is. I'm still a conservative, and he's flirting with somebody who's not. That's it. That's it. I know what maybe Ann Coulter and those other people would say. Well, our goal is to beat Hillary Clinton. Well, that's not a principle. That's not a principle. So anybody 1% less liberal than Hillary Clinton would be good enough. Why didn't you tell us that 20 years ago, Ann? Why didn't you tell us that 20 years ago, Laura? Why didn't you tell us that 20 years ago, Sean? Why? Because you wouldn't have jobs. I've said this before. I hate being a broken record. But if you even, for all younger people, even know what a record is, I've said this over and over. If they had done this 20 years ago and acted like this, they wouldn't have jobs. They'd be nobodies. They all have great educations. They'd be lawyers somewhere, but they wouldn't be leading conservative movement by coming out and saying, we accept anybody 1% less liberal than the Democrat who's running. They wouldn't have gone anywhere. But now that's what they're selling us now. That's what bothers me. If they'd have been like this for 20, 25 years, Rush Limbaugh and the rest of them, then I get it. But they couldn't have been. It's like the paradox. Had they been that way, they wouldn't exist. Rush Limbaugh would just maybe still be working for the Kansas City Royals, for all I know. Ann Coulter would be an ambulance chaser somewhere. Laura Ingraham, ambulance chaser somewhere. But they got there to their positions and earned all these millions of dollars, sold all these books, selling conservatism, not selling less liberalism. So, or lesser liberalism. I don't know how I want to put that. But Mike Lee, then, a guy who's sticking to his principles, he's the one that's going to get criticized. This is why this all has to end. This is why I'm a never Trumper. I don't want to have anything to do with any of it. It's all so dirty. And as I've told all of you, I'm just a regular person like the rest of you. I think that there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about that have nothing to do with politics or money. I think it has to do with power struggles. I think it has to do with who's friends with who. Personality clashes. I remember back in what I think of is like 2012. I heard S.E. Cupp, where's she gone? Is she a person anymore? What's she do? Once again, she's another person. I've always wondered for years, why does anybody pay attention to her? She doesn't say anything exactly interesting. There's no originality to her. She's attractive. That's about it. But in any case, I remember her being on Dennis Miller's show, and she said that if Newt Gingrich was the nominee, she probably wouldn't vote. Now, Newt Gingrich, had he gotten the nomination in 2012, he would have been as conservative a nominee for president. I think he still would have lost. I don't know if that would have changed anything. He would have been as conservative a president nominee as Ronald Reagan. Definitely more conservative than John McCain or George W. Bush or Bob Dole or Bush 41. But there's S.E. Cupp saying she wouldn't vote for him, even though she was supposed to be conservative, just because she thought that he didn't have the right attitude toward women. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I don't see myself in 2016 being like S.E. Cupp was then. But in that case, it was obvious to me, this was more being that she runs around Washington, D.C., and this was more about something personal than about any political issue. You could just tell. Because I'm sure on about 85% of the topics out there in 2012, Newt Gingrich and S.E. Cupp would have agreed on them. And see, I think a lot of this is what's going on now. There are people who want to align themselves with Donald Trump because they dislike some of the people, even if they're conservative, who are already there. Could be that Laura Ingraham hate Mike Lee. I don't know. But the more this goes on from day to day, it feels more and more less about politics, and it feels more and more just about personalities and cliques and fraternities and sororities and stuff like that, which I've avoided my entire life. I don't want to be a part of any group. I know in my personal life, like with my disc golf, in Pinellas County, there's like 4 or 5 different cliques. The grown men have cliques and things like that, as if they were gangs, is weird to me. There's this club, there's that club, and these people in this club don't like that club, and there's the old schoolers and the new schoolers, and it's just exhausting in a sport that's disc golf, which most people haven't even heard of. Me, I stay away from all of it. I just want to try to get along with all of them. I don't want somebody to decide for me who I'm allowed to be friends with and who I'm allowed to talk to. I'm going to be 46 years old in a month. Jesus. So if it goes on in disc golf in Pinellas County in 2016 among a bunch of grown men, then I have to believe it goes on in Washington, D.C. too, don't you think? But we don't hear about that side of it because nobody likes to admit that that's the way they are. It's just when you see them in person, that's the way they are. They know it's stupid, but they do it anyway. So, I believe that a lot of that is going on. But there's going to be a lot of conservatives who are going to find themselves on the opposite side of Mike Lee because of what he did. A lot of people who've decided to embrace Donald Trump, and Mike Lee is going to get criticized from people who he's probably more conservative than they are, and they consider themselves conservative. No sense of logic to it at all. One more thing before we go, and I mentioned Ted Cruz earlier in the show, and maybe this has a little bit also to do with what I just talked about, cliques and conservatives attacking other conservatives. There is an article at AmericanThinker.com. Did not write down the author's name, and it's a article that is fairly complimentary of Ted Cruz and what he did and what he's now saying. He's still out there speaking out against Donald Trump, but of course he's not getting as much attention now that he's not a Republican nominee possibility. And I think he's still holding out in the background. Something weird's going to happen at the convention. But he's out talking about terrorism. He talked about the terrorist attack in Turkey at the airport. And I think that he also had some things to say about the Orlando attack when it happened. That's going to be is it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now? Going to be 3 weeks? I think it's going to be 3 weeks this weekend. But I had this idea that I think one of the reasons that a lot of people have latched on to Donald Trump, and I'm going to try to put this in, because here's what I think I know about people. There's no polite way to tell somebody they're stupid, that they don't know what they're talking about. There's no polite way to say it. There's no polite way to say to somebody, you're ignorant. What's ever coming is out of your mouth is wrong. You don't know. You think you know what you're talking about. There's no polite way to do it. Some people deserve it, and sometimes people get into arguments over it, but rarely does a person take being called stupid nicely. And I've convinced myself, and this is just a theory of mine, you can knock it around in your heads this weekend. I think one of the reasons that Ted Cruz lost is because he makes people feel stupid. Not that he degrades people or puts people down or anything like that, but he is a smart guy. And I think that he had a good handle on the issues. And the difference is that Donald Trump doesn't make people feel stupid. And you'd think that that would be a big plus on his side. Once again, because there's nothing nice about making people feel stupid. But sometimes getting people to feel stupid about themselves is exactly what they need. You don't actually have to call them stupid, but people, adults, they don't react too well to that. A lot of times because it's just their own ego. Nobody is willing to admit that they don't know anything about something. And in Donald Trump, a lot of Republicans have found that person. He makes people feel a little bit better about themselves. You know why? Because he doesn't know anything. He can't tell them to make them, feel stupid in his speeches because he doesn't know that much himself. Whereas when Ted Cruz starts talking about the Constitution, most people have not read the Constitution. when he starts talking about the founding fathers and rights, I think your average American has an idea what rights are. But maybe not, given that we have 50% of this country who are liberal Democrats. Maybe not. But Ted Cruz is the type of guy, if you start talking to him, he's going to start making you feel very insecure about your own knowledge of things. Donald Trump isn't, because I don't think he knows that much. He's just a talker. Just like Barack Obama, just a talker. Barack Obama doesn't know anything. In fact, he doesn't want to know anything. He wants to ignore all of the problems out there just to get to the end of his administration so he doesn't have to do anything tough. I don't think that Donald Trump is a person who thirsts for knowledge. He already thinks he knows everything, even though he knows nothing. If he knew something, he'd say it in his speeches. He doesn't. He talks in platitudes and cliches. In fact, being a writer over the years, I've started to determine whether I think somebody is smart or not by how many cliches they use. And so there was that talk about Ted Cruz. Oh, he has the wrong demeanor, and he sounds like this, and he sounds like that. And I can see that, but I think it's more than that. I've convinced myself that it's more than that. He just sounds like a smart guy, and a lot of people are intimidated by that. Maybe it's a little bit too much like people are taking a freshman physics 101 class, and in the first 10 minutes, you start thinking, man, I think I'm over my head. Man, maybe I should have been a basket weaving major instead of a math major. But people, I mean, it's eventually somebody has to know physics because that's how buildings get built. You just can't go on continuing for everybody to ignore physics, or we'd have people jumping out of buildings all the time. But if you get that professor, you take a class, and he never talks about anything too in-depth, just 2 + 2 is 4, you're going to feel much better about yourself, aren't you? Well, hey, that guy doesn't know any more than I do. Meanwhile, no buildings are going up, no cars are being built, but dang it, I feel good about myself. Because it sounds to me like that's what's going on in the United States. There's that question that the pollsters always ask. Does Mitt Romney, can he identify with you? And everybody says, no, he's too dang smart and too dang rich. As if that matters. I'm certainly glad that Mitt Romney or any of these people probably can't identify with me. I don't even care. But I think that's part of it. Ted Cruz, I think, makes people feel insecure about their own knowledge when he's talking. And I think it turned a lot of people off. If there was ever a thing for being too smart, and once again, it was something that's been in the back of my head. Then I read this American Thinker article, and I start thinking, yes, there is something to that. It's not just his demeanor, his personality, his tone. It's what he's saying. It was like it was too much truth. It was too honest. It was too in-depth, and people don't want to hear it. They just want to hear from Donald Trump that it's somebody else's fault. It's China's fault. It's Mexico's fault. It's Washington's fault. It's illegal immigrants' fault that their lives suck. Well, what happens if Donald Trump becomes president and then we find out that that's not really the case? Because I'm starting to believe it's not the case. I think most blame lies right here in the United States with a lot of regular people. I said it. But I got to go. EdwardDentzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can find them at SoundCloud, Podbean, Podomatic, and YouTube. Facebook, LinkedIn. Email me, EdwardDentzel@Reagan.com. Twitter, Dentzel Domain. You can find my books. They're back up at Amazon now. My Govicide series and my book Distant. Maybe you want to check those out. Check out my other show, America's Missing Podcast. Going to be doing another episode this weekend. Very excited about that with my co-host, Melissa Bridges. And go find us on YouTube or on iTunes and give us a nice review. How about that? But you all have a nice weekend. Thank you for listening tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.